You rushed over here? Did you finish?
No, neither of us finished. There was like stuff going on that we both had to attend to anyway. She knew that I was going to come here, but
That
so we had
that
set
was
a
a good
timer.
pause. That was a good pause.
Uh, I set a like a 40-minute timer to leave at. I set it for 2:30. The timer went off, and I'm going. It takes me only 20 minutes to get home. And so I hit snooze and we just kept going at it. And I hit snooze, but I saw your text and I went, oh, Chicago 3. And I, and I mean, we were having sex. I'm not going to stop having sex, but it did like throw off the momentum a little, where at some point I looked at her and just said, that podcast thing I got to do. It was at New Mexico too.
Yeah,
So
the Chicago 3
I
is in New Mexico too. That's a
yeah,
fact.
I have
It's
to
a New York
go.
4.
It's a New York 4. Yeah, that's right. So I rushed over here. Um, Luckily, we both had like things to do, so it wasn't like I was leaving this like um, we both we were there was a time limit. I was just an hour off. Um,
I I
so
mean, setting a timer, that's that's not sexy at all. I don't know if that was
well, it wasn't.
were
Sorry, it
you
wasn't a
like
time.
were you like, hold on a moment, let me set the mood, and then you're like, hey Google, set a timer for 30 minutes. Like, is that
No, no. Okay, so like we both said, like, all right, look, if we start having sex, we're gonna lose time. So just set an alarm, and then we can like pick
I've
it up.
personally never had to set a timer, but to be fair, I've never been like, I might be late for something an hour from now when I start having sex. I've never had that issue.
Well,
Usually it's like, if
look. This
anything,
is
I need the opposite of a timer.
it's a humble brag.
It sounds like
I
it.
need to set an alarm, and then I also need to hit the snooze button.
It's
Uh,
either that or you need to like check your dosage or something that might be affecting some. There's a lot to unpack here, is all that we know.
I was listening to
Great way to start the podcast, though, especially since we've decided that we're talking about obsession today, right?
yeah, that's right.
Obsession with I don't know, just whatever happens afterwards, right? I guess that's the theme. After you hit sobriety, after you're like, I'm not drinking anymore. You
Well, let me ask you this: Have you found a consistency with this with other people who get sober and are like they just dive really, really into the deep end of something, just as a I don't know, kind of as a maybe not a defense mechanism, but just as a way to avoid alcohol, or just or keep all that energy and just push it onto something else.
well, I mean, yeah. Like when I used to go to AA, there was always that guy who like had like fucking pythons the size of pythons and I don't know. And like just obsessed with like working out, or there's like always some, there's always something. There's,
Hmm.
I've seen it in a lot of like the memes and like now there's like sobriety influencers and stuff. I don't know if you know that. But
I,
there's
I
yeah.
I'm aware.
uh which is, maybe we could become that. Let's see, let's find out. But it seems like sometimes that's the obsession. I think some people get really obsessed with their recovery, even when they're like, yeah, I'm only 2 years, like 2 weeks away from sobriety, and I'm a recovering influencer now or something. There's got to be something to put into that. Like when you first start doing AA, or at least when I did, they told me that you got to go to like it's like 30 meetings in 30 days or something like that.
Yeah.
And to me that's obsession. That's like fucking insane. That's
Yeah.
like, that's like, oh, you got to focus everything on this one thing, which makes sense because you're kind of replacing one addiction with another, which is harm reduction. um but it's interesting to see what people get into, right? Because it's usually like some sort of sign of who they are and how it helps their own sobriety. Have you noticed? Do you notice anything different about me?
What, of your hair?
Well, no, not my hair. I tinted my eyebrows for the first time.
What?
I said I tinted my eyebrows.
Why?
Well, okay, so I was looking at my face in a Teams meeting, as you do, and like you're
Mhm.
not looking at me right now. You're looking at yourself. I know. I can
No,
see.
I'm now. Ever since you brought up the eyebrow thing, I've been looking at you.
Yeah, it's crazy. Look at how like approachable my face is.
Yeah,
I
you look
I
more defined.
I know, and you could see all of my reactions, and it's not scary. I had blonde eyebrows for people who've never seen me. For all of our three listeners, I have blonde eyebrows, and so I was looking at myself in a Teams meeting, and I realized that I look like I'm mad, but I'm not because I have
Because of your eyebrow.
because I only the only like the little tips and like the ones the close tips closer to my nose are visible, and so I have like anime eyebrows that look like I was mad all the time. And so I
Is that what it was? Is that why you look so like condescending for
yeah,
the
I'm
past
telling
10
you,
years?
this has been a game changer, man. It's like that and my monotone voice, which is a result of my childhood, and but like my eyebrows I think made me come off as condescending and aloof and like an asshole.
Aloof is a very good word to describe how your eyebrows make you
Dude,
seem.
I have been described as aloof. The first time I ever heard the word aloof, someone called me that in high school. And I swear to God, it's because I have resting bitch face. I got that RBF, and it's because my eyebrows. And so I tinted my eyebrows last Sunday, and it's a game changer.
Yeah, do you feel like less aloof?
Well, it's not about me feeling less aloof. I've
Yes.
always been less aloof. It's about other people
Do you feel like
feeling.
you present less aloof to people? Like people, you said you feel more approachable. Is
Oh
that
yeah,
because of
people
experience?
at work are like warmed up to me. They're like talking to me.
That
They're
quote
listening
took.
to me. I'm saying things like I used to say them, but they don't get offended randomly, you know? And all it took was a trip to the benefit bar, the benefit brow bar, I think it's called at Ultra Beauty, and like 10 minutes of a man painting my eyebrows, and that was it. It was a game changer.
How often do you have to get this redone?
I get they said that it wears off at 3 to 4 weeks. So
So when people start like becoming distant and cold to you, that's how you're
yeah,
gonna know.
yeah.
Yeah.
The first time someone I say something and someone's like, "Well, that was mean," and I'm not
Yes.
trying to be mean, it means I got to dye my eyebrows.
I don't love that as a litmus test, but that is probably a good guideline to go off of.
I mean, honestly, I can see they're a little faded. I might ask them to like go a little darker. I don't know.
Oh, this
We'll
is how it
see.
starts. This is like someone getting their first tattoo and then they just can't stop. You're
I
gonna
know
have
it's
bushy
gonna start.
eyebrows.
I'm gonna start like my eyebrow obsession. I
Yeah.
found out you can laminate your eyebrows. Yeah, that
Wait,
was the
what?
face I made, but they didn't see me make that face because I didn't have any eyebrows. So they just thought, yeah. But yeah, you can laminate your eyebrows, which I guess from
What
what
is
I
that?
understand is you shock them and then relax them, which is my
I'm
dating
looking it up.
strategy. And and then it like makes your eyebrows more voluminous, which is a need and a benefit that people are looking for apparently. You're looking it up, I can tell.
I
I can tell
definitely
by your
am.
eyebrows.
Well, I've never had the problem of expressing myself with my eyebrows. So,
No,
oh
no,
my gosh,
you have very full eyebrows.
yeah, thank you.
Even now, with medical help, my eyebrows are still faint.
I don't want you to get laminate eyebrows. I'm looking into this right now. I think that you're better off just getting them painted.
Well, you don't make any decisions on my body, so I could do whatever I want with my eyebrows.
As a friend, I'm just suggesting that the laminated eyebrows is maybe not the dark alley that I want you to walk down.
But yeah, it's a game changer, man.
Yeah,
It's
this
these
is fun.
little
I feel relaxed.
I
I
know.
feel better than I've ever felt talking to you.
I want to these are going to be my husband brows. These are going to make me find a wife. So it's going to change everything. I finally figured it out. I don't need to go to therapy anymore. I don't need to sit here
Oh
and be
yeah,
like,
you're
why do
done.
people hate me? You know, I know what it was. Because I so many times I've been like, there's this consistent theme in my life where people just randomly get pissed off at me, and I don't know what it is. And my therapist is like, well, because of your background and your childhood, you are attracted to shitty people, and so sometimes you surround yourself with shitty people, and that's why you keep having the same reactions. And I was like, oh, you're right. And so this whole year I've been like, I need to focus on forming better relationships with better people, and it turns out I don't need to do that at all. I just needed to dye my eyebrows. That was
Yeah,
all I needed to
and
do. $24
now you can
a
run
month.
in the same circles. You
I
can go
know.
back.
I can go back to
You
doing
can.
comedy again. I could probably start
Yeah,
drinking again. Solves everything.
yeah. This was the factor. I think that like scientifically, we have to go back and try out the past 10 years again, and just to see
Exactly.
what a difference it'll make.
Exactly. You get it. Anyways, yeah. What would you ask me? Something non-eyebrow related? I don't care.
Did I? Now I can't really stop thinking about it. I think that we were going to talk about obsession and stuff, but now I'm obsessed with those eyebrows.
When I first got him, I was like, what's his name? Harpo Marx. What's his name? The guy who's like, "Rrr," and he's got the big eyebrows. I look like Eugene Levy. I was like, this is incredible.
Did you feel like Eugene Levy? Did you feel like
Yeah.
you carried
You mean,
yourself?
oh, you mean hilarious? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Jody, the song and dance man with his eyebrows now.
Yeah. I mean, they were kind of, I don't know, they were like kind of stained a little bit. So I had like even, they were, honestly, my eyebrows was now that they're dyed, they have such an arch to them. Like they look devilish almost. Like can you see it? There's like a very distinct, like your
Yeah,
eyebrows, straight caterpillars. Mine look like, what's the guy who was in all the horror movies from like the 70s and 60s and 50s? And he was like very spooky. Vincent something. Very
Vincent
just
Price.
whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks. Vincent Price. I have like Vincent Price eyebrows. Good
Oh
evening.
yeah, well
Oh,
this is fun
that's
since
Alfred
your
Hitchcock.
eyebrows are blonde, so you can like play around with what they will look like. Like next time
I
you go
know.
in, you can go like like I want the Vincent Price, or I want the
Eugene
I don't
Levy.
know, I can't Eugene Levy. I can't think of like other eyebrows.
Yeah, well,
I
you're
want the
not
art.
like
I like
in on the eyebrow circuit like I am.
yeah. Can you give me like the Armenian bodega owner? Can you give me that?
And they're like, absolutely. And they just pull out, they already have like a recipe for it. We get this a lot. But yeah, eyebrows, man. I guess we could talk about
Yeah, maybe this is a good time to start.
how do we segue?
um, well, okay, how about this? Here's a segue. This will be fun. This is an exercise in segue, even though now that we've said it out loud, we don't actually have to do a segue. But now the eyebrow thing has this, like, are you gonna, you're gonna keep up with it? It's gonna become a part of your identity as you go into the next stages of your life. Remember when you first stopped drinking? How your identity was was formed by drinking, and when
That's,
you put down the bottle, you didn't really have an identity anymore.
yeah, yeah, that's a
And
beautiful
so
segue.
I'm a little rusty. I haven't done stand up in,
That
a
was a
while.
beautiful segue. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know that when I got sober, I was like, "Who am I? What do I stand for?" Dude, I saw these
Who have I been?
who yeah, exactly. Like I saw these dudes hanging out in front of a bar the other day, and they were just like some normal guys. You can tell that it was like one of those kind of like cheersy kind of bars. There's a
Mm,
lot of those here in Chicago. They always have like a Hams sign in front of it. Hams is like a local beer here.
yeah.
And I was like, man, I have spent it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I saw them like smoking a cigarette, just talking. There was like four of them. They were all of various ages. And I was like, oh wow, I've spent so many hours just like standing outside having conversations with people who just keep like looking off into the distance and going, yeah, well, yeah, like King of the Hill style, like
Yeah.
basically just,
Yeah.
that's what they were doing. And I remember just like being in those spaces and hungering so much for something more, but not really knowing where to find that and
Mm,
hoping that it would walk into the bar, right? And it was like going to the bar was like part of my like discipline, like, oh, it's after work, I'm going to go to the bar. I want to be a regular at this bar. I want to be known at this bar. I got like wrapped, you get wrapped up in like bar politics
hmm
and stuff like that. And then you get into like the drama, and then there's like other regulars there, and then you're like you hear about their drama, and you're like, maybe I should date that person or something, and then you're like, wow, that's a terrible idea. You know,
You do it anyway.
then you do it anyways. Yeah, because you're like a bar person at that point, and that's like who you are. You're like on their Facebook page and
hmm
like their business Facebook page, like commenting on there, like they're like your buddies. You know, you're like the weird, when like the girl you like posts something and then you like it like within minutes, but it's a bar and it's like the karaoke list or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's your identity. And then you stop
Mhm.
drinking and you're like, oh man, where do I go? What do I do? Who am I? Like, is it that's from Les Mis? And it's like Les Miserables. You're shaking your head like you don't know.
No, I
Uh,
was shaking my head just like these eyebrows are out of control. They're making you sing on here. It's just too much
it
confidence.
is, it is, it is just imbued in me like a whole new confidence, and it's all in my brows. I
So you get sober. You're like, who am I? Where are my eyebrows? Who are my friends? And you 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 know, I mean, I don't know what like the trajectory was for when you originally got sober, but like it is a slow kind of crawl to like finding that thing that you're going to get obsessed with, but once you find it, that becomes a year at least. At least for it was for me, like it became like a year and a half of just this is what is on my mind constantly. I don't care about drinking, I care about this thing. And yes, I do feel insane sometimes, but that's only when I talk to other people. But I can't do that too often.
Yeah, but that's what you did when you were drinking, right? Because I was constantly being like, can't wait for this work day to be over so I can start drinking again. Or like when I wake up, I'm like, oh wow, I wonder if I could drink a little bit right now. And then when people are talking, I'm like, oh, we should get a drink sometime. Why aren't we drinking right now? Like it was
Well, see,
like,
but I worked in you worked in service, but I worked in bars where you could like, I mean,
well, yeah, yeah,
or
we did that
catering and
too.
stuff. You're just like drinking on the job,
Yeah, we did that even when my first year in advertising. We were like
right?
my ECD had his own special refrigerator that he stocked with Miller Lite, and it was like right near me. And at 2 o'clock, we always popped it open, and it would be like me and my creative director, the whole team, just like cracking open beers, like pretty much like a little bit after lunch, just as my
Oh,
hangover from the other. So it was like, yeah, I was there. And then when I worked at brunch, dude, we were like, I worked at this place for brunch, and everybody drank mimosas, which was mostly just like coffee cups full of champagne. And they didn't take
mhm.
inventory of the champagne, which I don't know why. I was too drunk to care. And so like me and like half the staff was just drinking like 16 ounces of champagne like every hour on the hour throughout
Yeah.
like the whole shift. And then I would work like a double. And I remember I would like get so drunk I would forget my second shift. So I'd wake up the next morning and check Yelp to see if I did anything. And then I would go and check the front of my car to see if I hit anything on my way home. And then I would have to go back to work to do it all over again.
Yeah, yeah. That would my shifts, especially the brunch shift, because I would like bartend and then with catering events and stuff. So I was bartending and bartending with catering. So you just constantly, if you're not soused, you're just around it. And so I just like leave. I would have the same thing where I'd leave my like at 3 o'clock the brunch shift would be over. Then I'd go do catering and stuff. And because bartenders are pretty autonomous during catering events, you're just kind of drinking throughout the night. Got to stay loose. Got to stay,
Yeah.
friendly. And then by the time like you woke up, it's like 5 a.m. Now it's 1 a.m. and you're just been drinking all day, kind of. And you got to wake up in like 4 hours to do it all over again.
Yeah. We would, when I catered, we would get fucking just drunk as shit. Most, not like gotta stay loose. Like we would get fucking drunk as shit, like doing shots of whiskey. Cause catering is so much of like hurry up and wait. So we'd like set
Mhm.
everything up, do the service, and then they would have like the wedding. It was always weddings. They would have the wedding, and then we would like be in the back, like drinking whiskey and doing like cocaine off the dash of the catering van and
Yeah,
like and all that kind of shit. And then like go out there and then like serve the reception all like drunk as fuck, but like no one else noticed that we were drunk as fuck because, well, we were high functioning. So like of course we were like, oh, good evening, and not slurring that much. It was more like, oh, good evening. And then but the cocaine helped. And then
oh yeah, yeah, for
and then
sure.
everyone else would also be drunk because it was a wedding reception. And so they were already like everyone was already messed up. And then, of course, like there's always like the people who want to drink with the staff. And so
Yeah,
they're sneaking us shots and like, like the crazy aunt and stuff like that. So it was just like,
dude, yeah, there would be so many people that would like, especially at weddings, but they would just wait because with the service and like the servers would get to go somewhere and do shots and coke and whatever, but bartenders are just standing all night, and so your only company are people coming up to you and drinking, and they like clearly on their face they're just going, "I'd rather be at this bar than in there." And you go, "All right, this is what's happening now. I guess you're my friend for tonight." And they just get so drunk and you're just kind of drinking with them because you can't drink on the job in front of others, but they want you to, like
yeah,
those guys, they want the company. um but anyway, so you're just constantly drunk in those kind of jobs and industries.
that's how I relapsed once. This guy came up and he was like, let me buy you a shot. And I was like, okay, I'm 3 months sober. Let's do it.
Where was that?
Well, I guess it was at illegal food. It was like in 2014.
Were you working?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. But I mean, everyone was drunk at that job. We would keep whiskey in the ice bin in the server station, and everyone would drink it, and then we would go downstairs and do whippets with the owner.
how did I not work at this place?
They weren't hiring at the time, and also
Yeah,
we barely made any money.
gotcha. I don't remember what I was doing in 2014.
It was
So
behind Limerick, if you remember that. We
oh,
probably
I do
shouldn't.
remember that.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't be openly talking about it, but whatever.
Well, that place has gone through like 5 iterations of something. Like that place could never stay open as one thing. It would always
Yeah,
close after like 3 months.
yeah.
Um, but
But
yeah, I
your
do remember that.
obsession back to the instead of just
Oh
talking
yeah,
about
right. Sorry. Yeah.
places we
No,
got
you know
drunk.
what? This is funny. Like we wanted to talk about obsession, and we immediately started talking about just drinking. So this is good. The that energy has to go somewhere though when you get sober and in
Yeah.
recovery. Like the thing that thing that you did for 12 hours at least most of the days of your life, that energy does need to, I don't know, it is obsession. So going somewhere else with it. And you brought this up in a previous podcast, but or maybe it was a conversation that we had after. But anyway, the thing that you got really into was yoga, um, which also like the way you explained it opened up a whole world of like therapeutic um, modalities, like soma and stuff. So
Yeah. I don't think I would have said modalities. That's a pretty good word. That's a $5 word right there. I yeah, I got really into yoga. I mean, I did yoga when I first got sober at 26. So a lot of my sobriety now has been trying to get back, like win back the stuff that I lost um when I like when I first got sober. And so I ended up doing a bunch of yoga and jujitsu a few years after I got sober. Since I got sober in 2018 and then the pandemic hit, um, I like started doing jujitsu and it was weird. I had like a lot of weird feelings with it, a lot of like icky feelings.
hmm,
And like a lot of it was about the physicality of it, like having someone like manhandle you or person handle, I guess we should say, so we don't gender it. Uh, but like just being like in a space with somebody that you're normally only intimate with, like having another person's face up against your face. Like I did jujitsu earlier today, and I definitely had a man's bare chest up against my cheek. And before I started doing jujitsu, I had never had that before.
hmm,
And so it's weird at first, and and I would have like all of these like weird like I don't want to say flashbacks, but it definitely it was like a traumatic response, right?
hmm,
To my first few classes of jujitsu, and then my coach was like, "Yeah, that's normal. You just got to keep doing it, and then it gets better. Like it's more of like an immersion kind of therapy kind of thing." And a lot of it has to do with like the stuff that I endured as a kid, and like like being bullied, and just like just being out of touch with my body. And as I was doing jujitsu, I was like, well, you know what? I want to get back into yoga because I was doing so much of it when I first got sober. And so I looked around, and everything around me is like core power, like intense yoga. And
hmm.
I started doing some of that, and I quit because I took a class that was like yoga to the 90s. And so we were like doing yoga to like Hanson and like Third Eye Blind. And I was like, this isn't what I want. I want like hippie yoga. I want
Yeah.
like Buddhist chants and like singing bowls and lavender oil and like someone to read me a poem while I'm in savasana. I don't want someone like saying, "Let's go guys, get into downward dog" while I'm listening to Bop and like trying to like work out my core. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm already
Hmm.
doing that in jujitsu. We're already listening to Bop in jujitsu. Um, Fun thing about Bop is that when they wrote that song, they were trying to make Bop like a measurement of time. Did you know this?
What?
Yeah. An Bop, if you listen to the lyrics, is a measurement of time. Like it's like in an Bop, it's gone. Yeah, yeah. Remember that? And that's it means that like life is over before you know it.
Wait, did Hanson write that?
I don't know. You want
Okay, but so the writer of that song wanted to funnel their idea of a measurement of time into the zeitgeist
Yeah.
by
Yeah, they were trying to like replace like a New York minute. Like, oh, I'll be back in an Bop. Like it's, oh, we'll be
no.
done in just an Bop or two. Like that's what they were trying to do.
For some reason, this makes me think of "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," which also feels like a measurement of time.
What, like
Um,
a go-go?
yeah, wake me up before you go go.
What's a
That's
go-go?
well, I don't know. I think that it's more of a fluid measurement of time. Uh, it doesn't have like exactly. It's like it's like a New York minute. Like you can it's pretty fluid as long as it's before a minute. Like I don't know, man. I don't know. You're the one that brought up this Umbop measurement of
I don't know.
time
I feel
thing.
like we're spending too many Bops talking about this. We need to get back to the
Let's get
go-go
back
at
to
hand.
the yoga thing.
Uh, and so I started doing yoga and I got super into it. Um, I mean, I like more so than I think jujitsu just because it was really opening up a lot of that kind of same traumatic stuff. But I was in a space where I could cry. And I don't, the last place I wanted, it was like jujitsu made you uncomfortable on purpose, right? But, and yoga does that too, in a sense, but it's also where they're like, you know, if I cry in jujitsu, no one's going to be like, let it out. They're, I mean, they might. I don't know. I just felt it was different, which I learned when I popped my rib and I had to like get up and be like, "Oh, it's fun," and then like go stand in a crowd of other guys who didn't pop their rib, and then they're like, "Let's spar," and I was like, "Okay, well, this is going to be terrible," and it was. But I learned a lot about pain. Um, but like in yoga, I was like getting into these moves or these positions and these stretches, and as my body started to like open up and I was finding I was being transported. And I mean this in like the most quantum leap butterfly effect kind of way. Like I was being transported to a traumatic event in my past. I could smell, it was completely lucid. Like I could smell the air. I could feel the breeze in my skin. I could like hear the people talking to me and see them and like I was like there. And then, and then my yoga instructor would be like, she does this really great thing where she goes, yogis. And that's like how you get out. And that's like how she like goes into the next position. And that would
Mhm.
like bring me back into this room. Um, and as I was doing it more, it was like lucid in the sense that I was able to kind of navigate that trauma. And it would be like memories that I just haven't thought about, or like I don't want to say forgotten, but definitely stowed away for later. And
Mhm.
and I was able to like process that shit. And I would be in like, child pose and then like this deep, deep, deep like tightness in my back would suddenly release and I could feel like the blood pumping through my heart and like I could feel my veins pulsating and like the heat coming out of my body. And then suddenly I would be like in high school and like I'm like talking to my stepmom or something like that. And I'm also at the same time watching myself talking to my stepmom.
Mhm.
And that shit was awesome. And I got obsessed with that. And I got like really into it. And I couldn't tell anyone about it cuz it sounds insane as fuck. It sounds like very woo woo where you're like, "Yes, I'm going into the past by astral projecting myself," right? It's like some Bob Lazar stuff. And well, it's not Bob Lazar. Who's the other guy? Coast to Coast. Bob Lazar, let's say he's legit.
Space Ghost.
No, the that's yeah, sure, Space Ghost. Let's go with that. The guy who does he does like talks about like high strangeness kind of stuff.
Bob
Um
Lazar.
yeah, well Bob Lazar may have been a legitimate like UFO. uh, guy.
I don't
Off
know.
topic.
No, like Karen or what is like? I don't know. I don't know. We'll
There's
circle
this
this back.
AM radio guy who used to like interview all of the high strangeness guys, and I can't think of his name right now. Um, but
Okay.
he it was like it's just like up there with like people who believe in crystals and like that kind of stuff where you're like, oh, I don't really want to get too into it. And as I was like working out or as I was doing yoga, I kept having these same experiences where I would be opening up my lower back, dude. That one, opening up my lower back and like finally having access to my psoas was like almost like a traumatic event, but also very releasing at the same time. And when it happened, I was doing a forward fold and I couldn't even touch my toes. I couldn't touch my ankles. And my yoga instructor like pushed a little bit on my back and uh and suddenly it was like this massive explosion of like pain and pleasure and like my blood pumping, and suddenly like I'm like transported to like high school and I'm transported to like college and like things that happened when I was drinking and stuff in my childhood, and I'm like all over the place. I mean, it's like the season finale of Quantum Leap. I'm in all of the everything that's ever happened to me happens like very fast in this like crazy montage, and then I was able to touch my toes. Uh, and
Hmm.
it just like did all this stuff. So I kept bringing this up to my therapist and no one else. And she told me about somatic therapy, which is this idea kind of based off of this book called The Body Knows the Score, I think, or The Body Keeps the
Body keeps
Score.
the score.
Yeah, The Body
Yeah.
Keeps the Score by Dr. And it's this idea the guy it's this idea that we keep trauma in our body. I think there's like this, there's always this separation between the brain and the body. And this researcher worked for um, Veterans Affairs, and he spoke to a lot of like Vietnam veterans, and he found that they were able to he found that there is like a direct correlation between trauma and like body work and stuff like that over the course of some odd years. I don't know. I don't want to give it a bad synopsis. I'm not doing a great job here, but
Yeah.
it's this was like 2 years ago, I think, and I was like, wow, that's the thing. That's what I'm doing. And so I was like, all right, let's see what memories are in my IT band. And so then I'm started like focusing on my IT band. And I was
Hmm.
like, there I'm exploring memories in this like third person view as I'm doing like a triangle pose or like, like like I would be like, what's in my back? And then I would do like a dolphin pose. And then suddenly I'm transported to my childhood, and my mom is driving in a car and I'm like in the seat next to her, but I'm also in the back seat watching us have a conversation. And then
Hmm.
it's interrupted by my yoga teacher being like, yogis, um, and all of this stuff. And then I
Hmm.
would eventually, eventually I went through all the memories and I was able to like talk it out with my therapist each time. I did EMDR for a while, which, if you don't know what that is, that's where you do like tapping, or you kind of have this like left, right sort of motion. Usually, I was doing kind of a tapping with my right thumb to my fingers and my left, but there's people do different things. Um, and the idea is that it kind of like helps you separate yourself from a traumatic memory as you kind of explore it through like visualization. So I was doing that, and then um, I was eventually I was finding that instead of having these physical memories, it was just emotion. And so sometimes I get out of yoga now and I'm just like pissed off. I'm mad. or sometimes I'm pissed off and I'm also like a little goofy. And sometimes I'm like pissed off and maybe a little horny. And like there's just like all of these different like very visceral core emotions that come out from like getting into my body, getting connected with my body. Um and it's still like very much something I'm obsessed with is this sort of like physicality of where my emotions lie within my entire body.
Mm.
Um, sometimes I'll be like, man, it's like that old saying, like if you're pissed off, if everyone's pissing you off, you're probably hungry. And if you're pissing everyone off, you're probably thirsty or you're sleepy. I think you're sleepy or something. I forgot how it goes. If you're pissing everyone off, you're hungry. If everyone's pissing you off, you're sleepy.
Mm.
And it was like that, but it was like more like, oh man, why do I feel so like fucking sad right now? And it's like, oh, it's because my fucking middle back is just, I'm just slouching. And then I would like pop up and I
Yeah.
would feel this like rush of blood going into different places. So now, I do like legs up the wall almost every day. And that shit, like when I first did it, my face was getting all red and my heart was pumping and I was like feeling all these emotions. And now I do it just to calm down.
Hmm.
And I'm sure there's a bunch of medical stuff that's attached to it that I could spout out all day, but that's not what I do. Um, but yeah, this sort of like obsession. I mean, I had an obsession with my own recovery, and it was about getting connected back to my body in a way that was healthy, in a space that was healthy. And now, I mean, I feel great. I feel very attuned with my body to the sense that like if I have too much sugar, I'll like I'm able to be like, "Oh, that's why I feel like shit. I had a muffin 3 days ago." That's also just being old. But but I didn't have that before. Like
Yeah.
I didn't really have that kind of like connection. And it's bringing me more into like this now space where I'm more present because that's where my body is. Whereas before, when I was drinking, it was this, like we did last year, this whole last podcast, this whole shoulda, coulda, woulda mental kind of projection. Um, and whenever I find myself doing that, I just like try to get back into my own body. And that's just checking my pains. Usually I'm like, what hurts? And that's how I'm like, oh, I'm so glad to feel pain. So happy to feel pain, you
Yeah.
know? Because the other option is to not feel pain, which means I'm dead or numb. And I would much rather be like aware of the pain than not.
Hmm.
But I think what you got into is way more interesting because I didn't know. I know a lot of people who get into yoga, and I know some people who are into somatic shit way more so than I am. But I don't know anyone who's into chaos magic, man, except for you. And I don't know anyone who got into mystical Christianity and then
Hmm.
moved on to just good old fashioned Orthodox Christianity. And I don't know anyone who's thinking about becoming a monk.
Well, at this juncture, it's the priesthood or bust. But yeah, the monasticism was definitely upon the discernment table due to uh, the true expression of Christianity is not a monolith. So there are various types of Christianities. The ones that are more founded in the original, the historic Christianities that go back, over 2,000 years are definitely more mystical than we are, especially us, like being raised in the South. There's a lot of like Christianity down there that is not tied to any kind of mystical practice. Um, it's mostly just people being mad.
Yeah.
Um, so, so yeah, that is. I appreciate what you said about getting into yoga and like soma though, because it seems to me that that had much more of a healthy effect that had some kind of longevity to it because you're still doing yoga.
Yeah.
Um, where I got really into chaos magic. Um, okay. So the way that it worked was I got sober, got back into reading like Taoism philosophy, which is something that I was into in high school.
I
And
chain.
then yeah, yeah, and then by through that opened up doors into the world of chaos magic, which led me into my the practice that it was over like almost 2 years of doing ceremonial magic, at least once a day, if not two, um, which became my. I mean, that was definitely an obsession.
I think I think our listeners, all two of them to three, uh, I deserve an explanation of what chaos magic is because it's not.
Oh yeah,
I
I'm
don't.
sorry.
They don't have like core power chaos magic like they do yoga. So I think they need like a
I
basis.
think I think that if I could talk about this a couple years ago, I would have a better definition. But the way that I understand it and the way that I practice it was chaos magic is the axiom that goes along with it is um,
Hold on, let me Google axiom real quick.
um, nothing is true, everything is permitted. So the practice of chaos magic is using what works and um, like shedding what doesn't. So taking from different spiritual systems, different spiritual practices, and even religious practice, and using what works for you. And like, this is how we get various pantheons in our own minds. The idea of gods is pretty fluid. So there's like spiritual and psychological models for magic. So there's the spiritual model, which is all this stuff is really happening in a spiritual way. So, like, angels, gods, demons, all this stuff, and all of these spiritual practices has a place in the spiritual plane, which is real. Angels, demons, and gods work um, alongside, but they are not. They have their own kind of like agency. And then there's the spiritual or the psychological model, which is kind of saying like angels, demons, and gods are, and all these spiritual things are coming from within. They're like aspects, kind of like like Jungian archetypes. And so we work with them by you can like say like you conjure a an angel or you conjure a demon, and this is a way that you work with an aspect of yourself that is not um, that hasn't emerged, that is kind of hidden within you or that you want to get more of in your own life. So like you would you would create or craft a ritual that would invoke Mars energy for more like aggressiveness or more I don't know, warlike mentality, but like, just kind of your day-to-day living. Um, be more assertive. Jupiter, like all the planets align with different energies and understandings of like what that energy does. So aligning yourself with those kind of energies is the way that the rituals work. But the thing, so chaos magic was cool, but it didn't. I think that the obsession part is really important. So chaos magic did not have like the lore because it's so sporadic. It is like a DIY magic system.
Yeah, one could say it was chaotic.
One could, but I don't know why they would, other than just to be
Why
a
would they
punny
organize something
name.
called chaos magic?
Yeah, well, it is. It is like it. Well, so chaos magic. It's based on like mathematics, so like chaos math. So there's quite a few different books out there that talk about chaos magic using mathematical formula. I've read them, and it is like fine. It's not really good science, but I understand like where the science is coming from. It just doesn't like like there's a focus on in economics. I think it's called the black swan effect. So in like chaos magic, there's this idea of the black swan. Like I don't want to. It's we don't have to get into it. So the moving outside of chaos magic. the thing that I got really into was ceremonial magic, which um, is well, I mean that's legitimately why what led me into Orthodox Christianity, because they're doing the same thing except it's a little different. But the things that they're both trying to do is unionize the practitioner with God. So ceremonial magic and Orthodox Christianity both are systems in which you, the individual, is um, becoming united to God. Of course, in ceremonial magic, what is God? Who knows? It's not really. It becomes a little chaotic and a bit fluid. But in Orthodox Christianity, there is a sort of a goal in mind, so it makes more sense to me. Um, Now we can either get back to that or not, but I want to bring this up because you made me think of it last time we were talking about your yoga experience, which was when I was practicing ceremonial magic. Um, and I was doing this twice a day for an hour at least. Like, so I was doing it 2.5 hours every day. And the more I did it, the more the practice itself is very visual. So it's visualizations and you're moving. It's called the LBRP, or Lesser Banishing Ritual. The pentagram is the main one that you do, especially in that first year. During this ritual and during invocations of angelic beings, there would be a lot of times where traumatic memories would come up in this sort of, and this is going to sound woo woo because this is how it is. I haven't like talked about this with anybody because it's hard to put into words, but the way that they would come up would be like this kind of flame from my feet, and then the smoke would come up, revealing these memories. Um,
Dude, anytime
and
we say something woo woo, we should have like a sound cue. Like we go woo woo or something.
can we get? We should do the Outcast hooty hoo.
Woo-hoo! Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's ludicrous.
No, I think well, maybe they both do it. I don't
I
know.
don't know.
Um, but anyway, so like I would have a bunch of times where these, and to describe it in that way is the best I can do. It didn't feel exactly like that. It felt sort of like that. Who knows? But these memories would come up, and because I didn't really, I I didn't know ceremonial magic, to put it into like the basic terms. I didn't understand that trying to unite yourself with God meant purging yourself of all your body's traumas and all of these things that you've been holding on to. Like, it is like this, it really is a purification process where all these things emerge and arise and come out, and like you have to confront them. And I know my first year of sobriety was really, really difficult because I didn't have anybody to talk to about this. And when these traumatic memories came up, I would just like shove them down until I figured out like what you're supposed to do with them. But it became a similar thing of like with drinking, where you just like, if a memory comes up, well, down the hatch. I'm gonna drown that out.
Stuff it
Don't
down
want
with
to deal with
Brown.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, And so at first, magic became like literal drinking, where those things would come up because that's how the practice works. And I would just push it down until it come out in other ways. Um, but it does, like, I really do um, believe that that was what helped me get out of my, the place that I was in, because all that stuff came out and like it had to be dealt with, even though I didn't deal with it correctly at first or in a beneficial way. But it did help get the ball rolling toward like, okay, this is like a traumatic memory. This is probably why you blank and you blank and you blank. Um, let's work on that, and then using ritual itself to like go into the memory. um, there's this great practice. The ritual is called analysis of the keyword, which is the opening to the lesser or greater ritual of the hexagram. And the analysis of the keyword is really great because you do this ritual, and at the end, before you open or close with the hexagram ritual, you bring down this divine light. And this practice I got from this guy named Damien Eccles, who he explained, like, if you just visualize a memory that's really like full of like a lot of emotional weight, it can be a traumatic one, or it can just be one that you really need to like heal in some way. And the idea was to do this ritual and bring down the divine light onto this memory and just like fill it and fill it and fill it. And there's also rituals where you invoke like a bunch of angels, and like you invoke like an archangel, the angel, I can't remember what they're called, the angels under them basically, and just all this divine energy, and you collapse it on your memories. It doesn't make the memories go away. It heals them in this very active way, because visualization really does like take you a long way. Um, and magic is mostly, not mostly, but like to me it was mostly visualization exercises.
That's interesting. Is it
Yeah,
the is it like the actual ritual itself, like the chanting, or I don't know what it is, but the actual practice of doing this thing that is a little bit less of an like of interaction kind of thing. Like for me, what was beautiful about yoga was that I could focus on my breathing without having to interact with anyone outside of myself, and so I was able to interact with the things inside myself and like sit there and like, a lot of restoration yoga is like sitting in a pose for a very long time, like 10 to 12 minutes. And there you're sitting there and your hips are hurting, and you're kind of like, well, I'm going to keep sitting here. And then that's when all the shit popped up.
yeah,
Um, but it was like, I was able to, because I was sitting there focused on my breathing, focused on my awareness, I'm able to like navigate that memory itself. Is it sort of similar in that where you're, I imagine saying the rosary over and over again can get you into like a trance, like almost meditative state.
it
And
does. Yeah.
so, yeah,
Um,
I guess, is that what it does? Is that like,
well, this is I did a lot of like my own kind of contemplation on the rituals themselves, specifically the LBRP, where I there's two ways of looking at it.
LBRP?
The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram.
Okay. All right. No,
Um,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
sorry,
Sorry.
yeah, so it the way that I look at it is through two frames, where one is that this stuff is really happening because of how etheric energy works. Like when you move with intention and you're like drawing the pentagrams and you're chanting or you're intoning the names of God, and you're charging these pentagrams with that energy, and then you're invoking these archangels. One, it's a lot for your mind to like keep focus with. Like it's a supercharged meditative practice, just because your mind has to visualize this the whole time. So there's a lot going on, and the way that it, from experience, that it's all real, like that like I don't, if psychological, spiritual, who cares, it's really happening in some form and capacity. And and so things are going to come up regardless. The rituals just work. The thing that I was kind of toying with the idea of is that the ritual, it's almost like giving a infant like car keys, where they're just like focused on this, and then the life can happen around them. Like, just, it's like a pacifier, where this ritual works in this kind of like, I hate to use the word psychological, but like in this psychologically like pacifying way, where all the stuff that you've been keeping in your subconscious can arise because you're so focused on the ritual itself. And so the like, to me, magic, the point of magic is union with God, which also requires, or it could also just mean the marriage of the subconscious and the conscious mind. And so these rituals themselves is that way of you're doing a lot of conscious stuff. You're doing a lot of projecting. But at the same time, all that subconscious like gunk basically is coming up through the ritual, either because of it or just as a side effect of it. It doesn't really matter. It does. And that was like my experience with it. Like that is how I don't know how it works. It really doesn't matter how it works. It just does. So when you're doing all these rituals, um, it's almost like your brain can finally like relax by doing something difficult. Um, and whatever you've been pushing down is going to come up. Like it's no coincidence that a lot of ceremonial magic practitioners are also psychologists. Um, so I don't know why they work that way, but it does, you know. So that was my experience anyway.
So you got sober early 2020, right? It was like right before the pandemic, and you were like, you know what? I'm gonna get into math magic, and
So
and then
yeah,
and then you
yeah,
got
well,
like really into that, right?
yeah.
And
Uh,
then that led you into ceremonial magic.
right. Well,
Okay,
so the chaos magic I thought would be helpful because magic storytelling is a form of magic. So I thought that like because it was 2020, it was during the lockdown. What I wanted to do was just write scripts and stuff and just focus on that. And I thought, you know, I'm writing about magic. Why don't I just practice magic? It'll probably like help with the writing. Um, if not to give
that's
me
how it
context.
always starts, man. That's how it
That's
always
how it
starts.
always starts. Yeah.
Dude, I used to write for Aldi, never been to Aldi in my life. Sold Aldi to myself. And then I got food poisoning from something I got from Aldi, threw up while in the meeting for Aldi. So that always happens. You always sell
That's
it to
your yeah,
yourself
that's the
somehow.
circle of life. Yeah. So that I mean that's legitimately how it got started. And then from chaos to ceremonial magic to eventually just getting into Christian mysticism. Um,
All right, for our audience, you got to tell us what Christian mysticism is,
so uh,
because that's like Gnostic shit, right?
so Gnosticism is a
Sounds like
heresy.
nasty
Uh,
shit.
I think Gnosticism is very, very interesting, but it also has a lot of anti-Semitic qualities to it.
Oh,
There's a real I hate to use the word problematic, but it is Gnostic Christianity is pretty problematic, not just as a heresy itself, but also because like let's just go to the big one. The God of the Hebrew Bible is thought to be by the Gnostic Christians either the devil or like just a lower entity made in like a blind, ignorant, arrogant, um, awful creature, not
oh,
the God above all gods. Um, Generally thought like with like when atheists say like I don't believe in the Christian God, that's like the idea that they conjure. Like the Christian God sucks. He's just like killing people and stuff, and that's what the Gnostic Christians kind of thought too.
yeah, okay,
Uh,
yeah.
so um,
But it was more like your God sucks. It was not. It was yeah. I get it.
it was more yeah, it was yeah.
Were
There's a
they
lot
as
to this.
obnoxious as atheists? Were they just were they on
They
Reddit?
they would you believe that they were?
I yeah. I honestly thought Gnosticism had something to do with how Paul sent a disciple to Ethiopia, and that's where it came. That's why there's. I thought it was connected with Ethiopian Christianity. But that was because I watched a lot of History Channel in the early 2000s when everything
Okay,
was
yeah.
like, is this really Jesus? And you know what I mean?
Oh, right,
And then
yeah.
there,
So
yeah,
yeah.
the Shroud of
Now,
Turin and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, Gnostic Christianity has a few different expressions. It's an umbrella term. It doesn't mean just like one sect. So the Matrix is a pretty popular example of Gnostic Christianity in almost taking it to the nth degree. There's a lot of different Gnostic Christianities, but it's a lot about just escaping from this material world. it reminds me of like reincarnation and like escaping from like the Hindu concept of Maya or the world of illusion. It's very similar to that. Um,
Okay.
so so
Totally.
anyway, the yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah. Now I
I
get
know
it.
that, yeah, I know that you're keeping up. I get it.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
tracking, man. Yeah. Just it's like hanging out with Maya or
yeah,
whatever.
so the Christian mysticism. So that in relation to why I got into this because of ceremonial magic and Christian mysticism, there's a concept called theosis, which is union with God. And in chaos magic, maybe less so in ceremonial magic because it's still kind of an individual's idea of God. But there's a term called apotheosis, which is union with God, but like God is like a projection of you,
That's
like
cool.
your higher power. Yeah, no, it is kind of cool. But in theosis, the idea is that God is not a projection of you. You are uniting with a creator deity that you have the image of, but you are not God, right?
Hmm.
And and
I
so
like that.
the
I like the one
well,
that makes me God. I like
yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people do.
It speaks to
Um,
my narcissistic tendencies.
yeah, it speaks to a lot of narcissistic tendencies. I trust me. Um, that's why ceremonial magic circles are full of pretty egotistical people.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So Christian mysticism is going through the process of, I believe the first step is like it might be called something else, but purgation or catharsis, where you are basically doing what you described, where you're doing these practices and you're shedding your trauma and you're shedding this kind of like in alchemy, like you're burning away the dross and getting to the gold within you. This is like that internal alchemy.
Yeah.
um
Dross. Yeah. Totally.
yeah, so
I got so much dross.
you're
When I got sober, I was covered in dross.
and so you're burning that stuff, you're burning away all these traumas and stuff, and you're integrating them into yourself so that they are no longer dragging you, to use like a term.
Is
uh,
dross a type of weed? Because that's mostly what I burned when I
yeah,
first got.
that's where we get that term drove from.
Oh,
It's the same thing.
that's good. That's a good joke.
Thank you. But so like
That one
we have
caught me. Sorry.
I did it.
So stupid.
That's so funny. I thought you were setting me up for that. That's
No, I
great.
did not. No, I am just trying to track with there's a lot of big words here. And
Yeah, I'm
I
sorry. I'm going through a lot of information. This
yeah.
stuff is very exciting to me. So to to go back. So what you did, what you started, what you are doing, and what you will constantly be doing is going through the process of catharsis, which is burning away the things that direct your mind toward worldly things. These worldly things are just these are the things that in other traditions, like traditions especially with reincarnation, these are the things that keep us tied to the world, to the wheel of samsara. Like they keep us entrapped in this like illusionary world where all these fleeting things and in Buddhism, like the things that you cling to,
Yeah,
these
like
are the things that
attachments.
yeah, exactly, we're
Yeah.
burning them away through this process. And so after catharsis, there's theoria, which is seeing God, having a vision of God, and then finally theosis, which is union with Him. Um, and so this is the practice itself, and it's ongoing forever, never. And even the cool thing is, like, even in the idea of heaven, it's like not this is not where we end, but we're still going to be doing this process in paradise. Um, And so how I got to here was actually kind of because of Aleister Crowley, who said, I want a practice, I want a life goal that I can never hope to accomplish in my lifetime.
That's
Um,
interesting because that's why I picked up yoga and jujitsu.
oh, really?
Yeah, the sustainability of something that I could practice and never fully become a master of
Yes,
because
that's it.
it was fun. It's to me, it's about doing something without the goal of getting better. It was just doing it for the sake of doing that
Yeah.
interested me into it. Because that's, I mean, that's what drinking was, right? So it kind of pulled me into that where I was like, oh, well, I don't want to have, if I put any pressure on myself to do good or do better at something, I'm going to fail. But you can't fail at yoga. You just practice it. You can definitely fail at jujitsu, but the whole idea is that you keep doing it, um, because even if you do fail, you're still not failing, right? You're still, there's a whole
Right.
philosophy behind it about being a good uke and stuff like that. But uke means partner, but
Oh,
but it's like bigger than that. It's like the partner that like helps you train, and you
oh,
have
like
to,
a soul friend.
yeah, kind of. It's like a respect for the, you guys are both there for a reason,
Yeah.
and you help them get better, they'll help you get better. So it's like it's a little bit of like the distinguish, like the emptiness of
Hmm.
ego or something like that, like the killing of the ego. And it's not like at work where I have to be the best. There's no there's, it's competitive but also not competitive. It's just that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's that's very Christian in outlook, just because of the, I think it's in Proverbs. I can't remember where it is, but like the wise fall 7 times and get up 7 times, but the fool falls and doesn't realize they fall. Um, like
Shit.
the practice itself is just continuing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and also I think that's a really important point that you brought up, like, which is what magic didn't have, where in Celtic Christianity they call it the Anam Cara, which is the soul friend, and it's this person that's not like, it's like a spiritual father. It's this someone who, and maybe less than a spiritual father, but it's just someone who is with you during your journey and wants to see you succeed, and you also want to see the same for them. um, and when you're practicing things such as ceremonial magic, and especially chaos magic, there's no real community in that way. Like, you're not, especially since like chaos magic specifically doesn't, there's no there's no fixed goal. But in ceremonial magic, it's such a solo activity that it's hard to keep going, and it's hard to know what you're doing wrong and what maybe you could fix. Um, which it's in the Bible, and it's also in the in Hinduism, and I believe, and maybe even Buddhism too. But like the idea of like a student teacher relationship is super crucial to moving through the world and getting better.
Yeah, that's definitely in Buddhism because they have, you know what a mala necklace is?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because they have the guru bead and the mala necklace, which is represents that like passing on of knowledge of enlightenment.
Oh, okay, cool. Hmm. Well, and so this is like, I guess that this is kind of an interesting place to be, because you're still doing yoga and still doing jujitsu, and my, like, the thing that I got obsessed with brought me to um, where I am now. And I was thinking about this earlier, but like the art, like the practice of recovery is, um, you're just recovering who you are, and the more you continue, the like the things that call to you during recovery, especially like yoga and jujitsu and even ceremonial magic, like these things that your mind and body want to do in those first, that first year or two, like, if you just do them, they will lead you to who you want, who you are deep down, you know.
Yeah.
And when you drink for so long like we did, it takes a lot to get to whatever that is,
Oh
but
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, like they say in therapy, they're like you have to find your true self.
Hmm.
And a lot of people are like, "Well, what the fuck is that?" Like my true self was at a bar and I felt
Right.
very comfortable there. 3 whiskeys in. Um, but a lot of people are like, usually your true self is like if you think back into your childhood or a time where you felt very happy, that's your true self. And I got to a point where I was like, well, I am forever 11 because I loved riding my bike. When I was 11, I had my shit together. I was flushed with cash, top of my class. Ladies were all over me. No, I'm kidding. I loved, all I did was just like make fun stories with my friends, rode my
Mm.
bike, uh, goofed off and wrestled with my buddies. And like, that was it. And that's what I've been trying to get my life back into doing. And now, I make little skits that we call commercials, and I ride my scooter and I wrestle with my friends and do yoga and stuff. And it's like that was what my recovery was about getting back to that true self and like finding that 11-year-old in me. And that meant that I have to do that every day because there's still an aspect of me that wants to get fucking drunk. I wanted to get drunk earlier today, actually. It was
Oh.
weird. And I'm like fucking coming up on 5 years now. And it was
Hmm.
because of a very like big trigger of mine is loneliness. And
Mm.
we had a big seminar in jujitsu. And then afterwards I was like, anybody want to get lunch? Anybody? I didn't want it to be over.
Yeah.
And then everyone was like, well, we're busy. I got to go do this. I got to go do that. And then I was like walking home by myself and I was like, well, maybe I should like for a minute. I was
Yeah.
like, maybe I should like pop into this bar and have a drink and no one would know. And no one would know. Well, except for you, because I'd be on this podcast about sobriety drunk and that would be,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I could see right through that now. So, and also like you would know.
yeah, I would
Like,
know. Right.
dude, how long would you beat yourself up over that? Would you beat yourself up for the next 5 years? Like
About
for
relapsing.
yeah.
I relapsed one other time and the next day I was like, it's okay. It's okay. But I
Okay.
didn't.
Word.
I don't know because I think some people think of recovery like that too, where they think like, oh, I got to hold on to my years, and it's like no, it's like every day. So even if I had relapsed the next day, I would have just tried to go back to it because it's not sustainable, and I'm trying not to die. But my
Yeah.
biggest thing is I can't relapse because I'll probably die. Because your body can't handle, that's like what happens, right? That's how people like OD and shit, like you're
Oh
or
yeah.
like die because your body like can't handle from going from like so much to nothing to so much to nothing, and then you go back to so much, and the next thing you know, you have alcohol poisoning. Like I don't know what would happen, but I probably would have drank like I used to and then woke up dead or like in the hospital or something. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's how I treat it. But like I was able to like uh take a step back and be like, oh shit, why do I feel like this? And it was because no one would go to lunch with me. And I hope that they listen to this podcast and they feel bad about that. I hope that they bring it up
I
to
could
me.
have relapsed if y'all had just
All you had to do was say yes to lunch.
yeah.
But it's like, it's interesting that you bring up that we both got attracted to these things that have no goal. And I think that's what recovery is, right? Like that's kind of the point that you were getting to. It's like it has this word recovery, like you're going to go to the bottom of the ocean and get the pieces of a whole of something that
Mhm.
imploded or like recover like something that you lost. But I think the more I get into it, I definitely thought that I was like trying to get back into something that I lost, but nothing is really ever lost, right? It's just kind of misplaced. And that's it turns into more of a practice of just maturing and being able to take a step back and observe yourself in a sense that outside of being an alcoholic, outside of like being drunk and being like, oh, why am I scared? Why
Mhm.
am I, why did I act like that? Why did I do this? And then you do that. And then the next day you'll be like, oh shit, I did it again. or oh, I'm getting better at this. It's like these small incremental things that you either get better at, but then anytime I'm like, I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm getting so mature. Something pops up where I'm like, fuck, how do I even handle this?
Mm.
And then, I find that the main thing about my drinking was fear and loneliness. And as I'm getting more into my recovery, I find that fear is so insidious that it's like, it's less of what I am trying to do. Or, sorry, it's so insidious that it actually encapsulates everything that I'm trying to do, which is face this fear. And I find that like I'm scared to talk to people, and I blow it off as being like any other reason. I find myself coming up with excuses to not even do this podcast, like all the way up to the point of us recording. That's because I'm scared of it. Even when we do the podcast and we publish it, I spend hours being like, ah, man, does anyone give a shit? Does anyone care about my talking? Am I just rambling on? And what are people saying about it? And I can hear their voices in my head. And that's just more fear. And like I had a really good day at work, or a good week at work. And my boss is like talking to me like regularly, and I'm getting a lot of like attention, mainly because of the eyebrows, I think. And even that even that is like scary as shit. And but it's also exactly what I want. And I think that was like where my drinking came into play, cuz it like felt like a ticket to everything that I wanted. But it ended up limiting me. And now what the ticket is just finding that fear, and then being like, oh, it's cuz I'm scared, and I don't need to be scared. I should step forward and do this thing. Um and that's the practice. I mean, that's why I do jujitsu. It scares the shit out of me, and I am around a lot of things that make me uncomfortable, and a lot of people that make me uncomfortable. Like I don't like having my chest or my face up against another man's hairy chest, sweating while they're like trying to grab my arm and put it behind my back and make my shoulder hurt very badly. That's not fun. But I pay some odd amount of money every month, and I go like 5 or 6 times a week, because it scares the shit out of me. And
Mm.
because of that, I'm getting better at being scared. You know what I mean? Like we did stand up. Most people are like, oh, I'm too much of a coward to do that. That's so scary. And we think about it now and we're like, it's not really that scary. But it
No.
is. Like it's scary as shit to hold a
Mm.
mic and like be in front of people. And but we do it because like that's the rush, right? Is to face that fear. And that's the practice of I don't know. I guess that's like what it is to be functioning, or like what it is to be in recovery, is to always constantly be like, "Oh, I'm scared." I think
Yeah.
it's about like facing that ugly side of you and not hiding from it, and just being like, "Okay, I'm scared. Okay, how do I defeat this? Or how do I process this? Or what do I do with this?" Right? Like sometimes fear feels like, like you're holding, when you're holding something and you got to put it down, but there's nowhere to put it. Like it's sort of like that. It's like you're trying to process this thing that you're carrying with you, and you're like, okay, well, I got to figure out what to do with this thing, and instead of ignoring it, I got to face it head on. And that's what yoga is. That's what jujitsu is. It sounds like that's what magic is. Sounds like what mystical Christianity is facing this thing that's big and scary.
It's all a part of uh, like the shamanic journey, which is recovery. Like the in Campbell's hero's journey is so complete when
Joseph
the
Campbell's a hero with a thousand faces, for anyone who doesn't know.
yeah, so when the hero leaves, and the whole goal is to come back. Like the hero changes, comes back, and now they've changed, and that's the point. Like they brought something back with them. But the shamanic journey is different, where you're constantly leaving and you're constantly returning. You're constantly going and fighting these things where you're finding more authenticity in yourself, and then you're returning back to the world that you inhabit, and then you're more authentic, and then you use that authenticity to go back and struggle with confrontations of yourself, and do battle and find more authenticity and then bring it back. And it's this wave coming in and out and in and out, where there is no completion. The hero's journey completes, but the shamanic journey is this constant leaving and returning. And I think that that's kind of the only way that any of this is done. Like you leave and you come back and you digest and integrate, and then you leave and you do it all again and again and again. Um, and it's really hard at first, and then for some reason it doesn't get easier. It just gets more rewarding.
Yeah. I love telling people that when they get when they get sober the first time. I'm always like, oh man, the first year is the hardest, except for the second year. And then after that, there's the third year, and now that one's really hard. But then it gets even harder after the fourth year. And
Yeah.
it just keeps getting harder, but you get better at it, kind of. Sometimes you don't get good at it at all, and
Sometimes you spend 3 years and you realize that you've been lying to yourself the whole time. You just
yeah.
haven't been drinking. Isn't that going to be scary?
And then you realize you got to start all over again, which is fun. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you talk about the shamanic journey. I think that's going to be the name of this podcast, this episode, because I think that's cool. Because I've really been like coming up on this thing that we were talking about obsession is one thing that I've learned is that every emotion that I'm having is also the same emotion of the opposite emotion, right? So let me rephrase that because that was fucking nonsense. Every emotion that I'm having is also the opposite emotion. So when I'm happy,
Mm.
I'm also happy because I'm sad, right? And when I'm sad, I or angry, which anger is just a different version of being sad, like a latte versus a cappuccino. It's still the same. It's still milk and coffee. Uh, it's I'm also like happy, and like all of these emotions are happening at the same time, and like that's something I always try to like figure out is like when I feel like a failure, it's only because I'm so successful. And when I feel successful, it's only because of all my failures. And it's like having to digest these things at the same like I've been trying to look at everything from like 1,000 feet. And instead of it being like having this dichotomy, it's more amorphous, right? It's more like you're sitting in this feeling of of everything, right? It's like a recipe of like,
Mm.
oh, you got to have like, you want to have like a balanced meal, right? When it comes to flavors like spice, like you have, sweet and spicy are good together. And that's kind of like why it works, right? Like elote is delicious and it's like tangy and spicy and sweet and you know what I mean? Elote is corn, mayonnaise, cheese, and tahine. If you don't know, uh,
No, thank you. I didn't.
it's a Mexican dish, and they serve it all around here in Chicago. But like they it seems like that's something that I'm like starting to realize with recovery. Like even when I'm pissed off, I'm like, why do I feel pissed off? And then I have to take like a little bit of inventory of what's going on in my soul and try to first I check my body and then I check uh like what's going on, like what happened in my life or like in my day that maybe I didn't address. Like, did someone say something to me or disregard me in a way that reminded me of something that put me in this space where I'm not present in the moment. And then I find out that's why I'm pissed off, because I'm not present in the moment. And I am also like, I look around and I'm like, oh, now suddenly I'm very present and I'm feeling very content and also pissed off. It's like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. The best way I could describe it though is that scene in The Nightmare Before Christmas when he finds Christmas Town and he's like, "What's this? What's this? There's magic everywhere." That was beautiful. Um,
Yeah, that was really good.
but there's that one point where he like pops into the snow and then he pops out and he goes, "What is this?" And he's like mad, and he's like mad because he's happy, but he's also mad because why the fuck did it take him so long to be this happy? And
Mm,
that's like I keep running into that. I'm like, oh, I'm mad because I'm happy, but I'm mad that I'm happy because I didn't get the happiness in time or something like that. And so it's like there's this kind of fear of like I could either explore that and sit there and talk about it, or I could just be mad, or I could
yeah.
just be happy, or I could like not understand this myriad of emotions that are happening that makes this balanced kind of meal that is this balanced flavor that is Jody Buffkin, right? Like that's like the phrase "I contain multitudes" by Walt Whitman. It's like that, but it's like whenever I first heard that phrase, it means that oh, I could be this, I could be that, I could be anything. I'm the master of disguise, or but really it means that I am everything all at once. And sometimes that's really hard to process, you know. And that's just like for me that is the new step in my recovery. At first it was like, oh, I quit drinking, so now that was like now my life is gonna be better, and then it
Mm,
wasn't.
mhm.
And then I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, well now I've been doing therapy, I've explored all my traumatic memories, and now my life is gonna be better. And then it wasn't. And then I was like, oh, okay, well now I know I have all these like I have this practice of observing my life from 1,000 feet, and now that's just my life, and that just is as it is, and I will be as it is all the time. And now I got to get used to that until I find a new thing that's going to scare the shit out of me, but I'm going to have to do it. Like death or something.
Wow. Yeah. Huh.
I don't know what my point was. I feel like I just rambled, but
No,
whatever.
I mean,
Sounded
maybe
cool.
you did. I don't know. I thought it was all good stuff.
Great.
Because it's um oh man, this is very so the mystical Christianity has its roots in like we brought this up, but like Orthodox Christianity. Um, whether that's the manifestation of Orthodox Christianity currently, I think that mileage may vary depending on where you are. However, this idea that we are all made in the image of God. God is a multiplicity. Like God, even just to go to the idea of the Trinity, God is one in three persons. So God is a multiplicity. This is not to mention like God's creation and how God expresses God's godness through the world and through each of us as
Like the
this kind of
movie with
one
Michael
layer.
Keaton.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Let's move. I'm just trying to put it in terms that I can understand.
But this idea is really the balance is really important. Like we are we are becoming persons through recovery. Like this is the practice. We are become our personhood is realized um, through recovery. However, this idea that we are some kind of like I don't know, like we can't really describe ourselves. We don't really have an identity that is better than just saying that we are fully realized human persons. Like that's the best that we can do. Otherwise, we're just naming things, and we're clinging to attachments, or we're just we're describing ourselves using things that we do or things that feel good. And like this is a it's a very limited scope of what the fully realized human being is or can be or whatever. And we are a multiplicity. If we're looking through the Christian lens, it is because we are made in God's image, and that is a multiplicity. But also, just in terms of what you said, like psychologically, spiritually, all this like psycho corporal ways, like we're all a product of everything. Like, um, and it is a lot to process. It is so much easier to just shove booze down that thought and be one thing, which is full of whiskey. Like but instead of that and embracing that the multitude that makes up yourself and allowing, like, today I'm called to do jujitsu. Maybe that'll be my practice forever. And then tomorrow I'll add something onto that because I feel called that way. But there's that, like, I'm not limited to this self-identification with stuff. I am a fully expressed human being that is interested in a lot of things, wants to do a lot of things, but I'm not those things. Um,
It's
and then of
interesting that
course you
you
get
say called. I would say compelled, but I
oh
think I
yeah.
think the difference is how the view of what is the motivation, where my recovery is very much an internal struggle, whereas I mean, I'm sure it is for you, but it seems that like the concept of God is something outside of yourself, right? So it's like,
Right. So it's an internal struggle to align oneself to the will of something outside.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think that distinction is important.
yeah, yeah. Obsessions, shamanic journey, all of those kind of things. I guess we'll end it there, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's I think it's good to end on a rant from both of us instead of just one.
Yeah, I think if we both ramble, then it's a nice balance for all of our fans,
Yeah, all three of them.
all three of our fans. Awesome. Oh, I just got I just got an email.
Oh, nice.
I hope it didn't get in here. Awesome, great. So, yeah, check us out every 2 weeks. Functioning. Tom and I talk about our feelings, talk about how we feel about recovery, talk about high strangeness and God and yoga and jujitsu and how we're soul brothers in recovery. Is it soul brothers? Soul friend?
Soul man, soul friend. It's your soul
Soul
friend.
man, I think, is a song.
Yeah, you're my Anam Cara.
Yeah, and an amakara to you too.
All right, goodbye.